Hey church, as many of you know, we launched 2 new campuses this fall, one in Virginia and one in Ohio. First off, I just want to shout out to the amazing team of volunteers at each of these campuses. Launching a campus is no easy task, but without you guys, it's literally not even possible. So I just want to personally say thank you. Secondly, I had a chance to be at our Virginia campus last weekend. Our campus had this fall festival for the community where families can bring their kids and experience some fun and connection. And we had about 200 people from the community come in to experience this and connect with our church. The amazing volunteers that pulled this off did a great job getting to connect with the people that were coming from the community and letting them know who South Hills is, why we exist, and how we can serve their families and connect them to a relationship with Christ. And at our Ohio campus, there are 2 different ladies that already made the decision to get baptized. Each of these women came to Launch Sunday and then came back the following week when we played a video talking about the importance of baptism. And the other really cool thing is they actually connected with each other and have already started building a friendship. Now let's fast forward. This last weekend, both of these ladies were baptized and their new church family celebrated alongside of them. How cool is that? Now these are just 2 of the many beautiful stories I've been hearing. God is doing some amazing things at our Virginia and Ohio campuses, and I would love for all of us to continue to pray and encourage them as they continue to do God's work.
I can quit whenever I want. I wouldn't even call my thing an addiction. It's just something I do. And it relaxes me. It's not like it's hurting anyone. Is it the best thing for me? Maybe not. But I can quit whenever I want.
So I'm not sure if you've ever thought about it before or not, or ever wondered or had the question, but it turns out that anybody can start a church. You don't have to have any special qualifications. You can just go start it. Now, if you want help and support and finances and organizations to kind of help make that happen, that's a different story. Because if you want that, you get tested and assessed and evaluated from every conceivable angle. And somehow, 3 different times, there's been giant organizations and people who have looked at me and thought, yeah, let's give this guy a shot. What could go wrong? Man, he's probably good for it. And so we've gotten to do this 3 times. This is the 3rd time, and it's been an incredible journey, and I absolutely love it. And so I mentioned before, though, as part of that process, one of the things that's come up in some of that assessment is that I have an addictive personality. And so I was going to start this morning by confessing an addiction that I have, but I'm always disclosing stuff about me. So I thought it'd be more fun, at least for me, to confess an addiction that my wife has instead. And so she does not have an addictive personality, but she does obsess over a few things. Mainly, most of them are connected to germs and dirt. And so she's a little bit of a germaphobe. Any germaphobes in the house? Okay, so you're in the minority. Sorry about that. She loves hand sanitizer, a lot, addiction level, loves it. And it's calmed down a little bit now, but she used to have it everywhere. It was in her purse. It was in her car. It was in every room in our house. It was just, anybody know what I'm talking about? Anybody know anybody like that? You just have it everywhere. You can always put it on your hands. I'm not like that at all. In fact, we have 4 kids, and when our oldest son, Jaron, was, maybe 7, 8 years old, we were at Disneyland, and she had brought a couple of lollipops, and we had bought them for them, and we gave them to them. He stuck it in his mouth, took it out, and was going to show me something, and dropped it on the ground. And she was kind of over there, and I looked, and she wasn't paying attention, so I was and I picked it up, and I was like this in the act, and she turned and looked as I was sticking this sucker off the ground, this lollipop, into her mouth, and she was just like, no. Of course, we also have a daughter who was, when she was 3 or 4 years old, we were in line for the Matterhorn, and I looked over, and she was like this on the handrail. It's like, yeah, those are the kids we're raising. When it comes to Hansi and hand sanitizer, though, she doesn't really even know if it works or not, but she loves it. She loves the smell, the feeling. She loves everything. She'd bathe in it if we could. Like we're not real like big animal people, but we did have a dog for a while. I swear I saw her like putting it on the dog, just kind of bathing them in it. And don't even bother with like hey, they actually think like overusing this stuff makes you more susceptible to disease because turns out some exposure to some germs and bacteria is pretty good for you. Doesn't matter. She don't care. Don't come at her with science. She's got the hand sanitizer thing that she loves. I read a while back that a lot of germs that we encounter that end up affecting us, they get inside our bodies actually through our nose. And I didn't even bother telling her that part because I just thought she'd start like rubbing it on her nose like it was going to be some sort of force field action, filtering things through. But the truth is like we all have, if we're honest, we all have things that are sort of our things, our hang-ups, our addictions, our things that we love. There's alcoholics and there's chocoholics and there's workaholics and there's shopaholics and there's people who are addicted to putting the suffix holics on words just to make up new words. And it says nothing of food or shoes or caffeine or social media or cigarettes or weed or showering multiple times a day. Like have you ever tried to start your day without your coffee? Just how well does it go? Right? Have you ever tried to stop drinking caffeine altogether? You ever feel that phantom notification buzz from your phone in your pocket, alerting you that a text message has come in, but when you reach for your phone, you realize you don't even have it on you? So several years ago, someone jokingly referred to that experience as textophrenia. But it turns out now with like the skyrocketing insomnia and anxiety and other mental health conditions exploding, like researchers are actually studying that phenomenon as a symptom of some larger problem that we have in terms of our relationship with technology. Have you ever had the Krispy Kreme Hot Now light lock onto your car like a tractor beam and pull you in? Ever gotten bad news or had a bad day and immediately started adding things to your online shopping cart for a little retail therapy? Ever headed straight for that comfort food or your favorite bottle of wine? Now, I know most of us are probably not jonesing for some heroin or fentanyl this morning. And if you are, you're okay. You're among friends. Like, we're not addicts, though, most of us, in that sense. But we've all had those moments where we're feeling anxious or upset or uncomfortable, and we had an automatic impulse to soothe or medicate those feelings in a specific way because we have some habit that helps us through that moment. And there's times where it feels like in those moments that you're not even really choosing those reactions as much as they're being chosen for you. You don't know how you ended up at Crumble Cookies again. Right? You swore you were going to stop vaping, but then today happened. And all you knew is that if you could just do or play or scroll or watch or buy or eat or drink or smoke or pop that thing, you'd feel better. And so here you are. And it's hard because most of us, our thing is likely kind of a little thing, or at least it feels like it is. So we just sort of brush it off. We put it in a different category. It's not like we're, scoring drugs under a bridge every other week. On the other hand, there are definitely times when it feels compulsive, like that moment when you get up in the morning and you just slept terribly and you feel trashed and you don't just want coffee, you need it. The truth is, like we're capable of becoming addicted to almost anything. In fact, every addiction kind of has its own paraphernalia, whether it's a Starbucks cup or a fast food wrapper or a screen that's in privacy mode or a lighter or, forgive me guys, or a golf bag and golf clubs, which is why we have to be careful who we wag our fingers at, talking about how could they, or I'd never go there, I'd never do this, I'd never become that. Because the truth is, none of us actually know who we would become or who we could become if we just left our soul unattended. The truth is, addiction can grip the soul of anybody. And it actually probably touches more of us than we admit. Because life is hard, and life will life on you. See, I have this core conviction in my life that I believe that we all of us, every single human being, like we need healing. Different levels, different times, different places, different parts, different reasons, but we all do, every single one of us. And even when I put my faith in Jesus, my heart and my spirit have come alive, but my mind and my body and my emotions and my passions and my will, they're still all in the process of being made new and being transformed. And so that's why this conversation, no matter who you are, no matter how buttoned up you got your life, that's why this conversation is for everybody. That's why this series is critical for all of us, because sin, by its nature, is addictive. It wants to master you. It wants to rule your life. No matter how spiritual you are, even if you ate communion for breakfast this morning and floated in here on a cloud, this is for you, this whole series. And in fact, in Romans chapter 7, the Apostle Paul wrote these words. He said, I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. I want to do what is right, but I can't. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. But if I do what I don't want to do, am I not really the one doing those things? Am I not really the one doing wrong? It is sin living in me that does it. I've discovered this principle in life, that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. I love God's law with all of my heart, but there's another power within me that is at war with my mind. And this power makes me a slave, or it masters me to the sin that is still within me. Oh, what a miserable, or some translations say wretched, man or person. What a miserable person I am. Who will free me? Who will rescue me from this life that is dominated by sin and death? Those might be the single most relatable verses in the entire Bible. As he's going like, I'm kind of over this thing. I'm over this stuff. But I keep doing it. And I go back and forth between hating it and justifying it. And I tell myself that I can control it, but I'm not sure that I can. And if you've actually ever come face to face with that reality, face to face with that tension, you know how unnerving and how unsettling that is. Because if we're honest, there are parts of ourselves and parts of our lives that feel like we're just white-knuckling it. We're doing the best we can to try to keep this runaway freight train from jumping the tracks and making a disaster and a mess of our lives and hurting all of the people that we love. And so we kind of push it over to the side and we ignore it and we downplay it and we do our best to sort of manage it and contain it. But the more that we do that thing, the more it grows, the more we rely on it. And now we can't start our day, or we can't go to bed, or we can't face that person, or we can't deal with that situation without it. Which is a problem, because when those things go unresolved, little problems always grow into bigger problems. There's a story in the Old Testament about a guy named Samson, and from the time that he was born, it was said that he was destined to be a great leader and the protector of God's people in Israel. And so he grew up being told that he was special, and he was. He had this supernatural strength which enabled him to do incredible things that ordinary men, he could do stuff that it would take 100 men to do. But there was a code, there was a vow that he had taken that he was supposed to follow in order to honor God and maintain the power and gift that he'd been given and remain as a leader. As part of that vow, he couldn't drink wine. Some of you are like, I wouldn't take that vow. He couldn't cut his hair, and he couldn't touch anything dead. Now, he did those things. He made that vow because he chose to not do certain things that other people could do so that he could focus on things that were more important to him, so that he could step into a place and become somebody that he couldn't be otherwise. Which is really amazing, but things are really hard, and so right from the start, his life is sort of split into two parts. There was everything that he was supposed to do on one side, and then there was what he did in order to deal with the pressure of having to do all the stuff that he was supposed to do on the other side. Which, man, that sounds a lot like our life. right? There's all the stuff you're supposed to do, all the stuff that is uniquely your task and burden and responsibility to do, and then all the things that you do on the other side in order to get through having to do all that stuff. And when you look around, more and more and more of us, like we have this need to manipulate our feelings in order just to survive our daily lives. And so Samson did what we do. His attitude was like our attitude. Man, life is hard and I deserve this. It's been a hard day, it's been a hard week, it's been a hard afternoon. I need it to feel a little better. It's how I get through, it's how I cope, it's how I deal with this thing. When you read his story, there actually isn't one particular thing that necessarily sticks out as what we would think of as a traditional addiction. But let me give you a few excerpts from his story and see if you start to notice a pattern. In Judges chapter 14, verse 2, it says, speaking of Samson, when he returned home, he told his parents, he told his father and mother, there was a young Philistine girl in Timnah that caught my eye. I want to marry her. Go get her for me. So romantic. In Judges chapter 14, just a few verses later, it says, later when he returned to Timnah for the wedding. All right, so they went and got her for him. He turned off the path to look at the carcass of the lion. Wait. He has a vow to not touch dead things. He's cruising to head to his wedding and he sees a dead lion. And if you're a man, you're like, I'm not going to not go look at that dead lion. That's interesting, right? But he does this is what we do, right? Like, I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to go check it out and look at it. I know I'm not supposed to touch it. I just want to be close to it. But it continues, and he found that a swarm of bees had made some honey in the carcass of that lion. And so he looks both ways. Nobody's around. Nobody's looking. So he scooped some of the honey into his hands, and he ate it along the way. And he also gave some to his father and mother, and they ate it. But he didn't tell them that he had taken honey from the carcass of the lion. Why? Was it for sanitary reasons that his parents don't eat honey out of dead animals? Well, that could be it. No, it's because he knew he had just violated and broken his vow. So he didn't want to tell them. In Judges 15, verse 3, it says, Samson said, this time, so these guys make him mad, and he's about to do something about it. This time I cannot be blamed for everything that I'm going to do to you Philistines. Then verse 4, and he went out and he caught 300 foxes. Can we just pause right here? I've heard this story a million times, so I was thinking about it this week. What a feat to catch one fox. This dude caught 300. I didn't even know there were 300 foxes, like close enough in proximity that you could catch that many in one area. But he catches 300 foxes. And he tied their tails together in pairs. And he fastened a torch to each of their tails. And then he lit the torches and he let the foxes run through the grain fields of the Philistines, or the people that made him mad. And then he attacked in verse 8. Not only did that, he attacked the Philistines with great fury and killed many of them. And then he went and lived in a cave. What a great little ending to that. And then he went to live in a cave. You notice at the beginning where he says, look, this time I cannot be held responsible for what I'm about to do. The other times I kind of flipped out and that was on me, you guys. But this time you really made me mad and it's on you. Whatever happens next, whether it involves foxes or not, or me killing you or not, it's all on you. It's an admission of like, hey, I know I've kind of been out of control, but this time when I'm out of control, it's not even my fault. It's just on you. You made me do this. He was responding to the stuff that other people had done that had made him mad. And the situation was so big and so overwhelming, he just lost control. See, here's what I have actually experienced in my own life and what I've watched happen for people in their lives is that God will allow you to face truly uncontrollable circumstances because he wants you to realize that you were never in control to begin with. Why would he do that? Because he loves you. Because he wants to bring you to the end of yourself so that you'll stop doing that thing, so you'll stop spiraling, so you'll stop exploding, so you'll stop making a mess of everything, so you'll stop fighting, so you'll truly face who you are and actually come to him and bring all of yourself, not just the parts that you want to give him, but you'll bring all of yourself and you'll give it to him and surrender your life to him, which is exactly what Jesus repeatedly said was required to actually know and follow him. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 and 25, Jesus turns and he looks to his disciples and he says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but for whoever loses their life for me will find it. So I've been a pastor for 28 years. I've been a Christian for 36. And if I'm honest, there is still part of me at my core that still bristles whenever I read those words from Jesus. Because that step of taking up a cross, of denying yourself, of dying to yourself, is always the hardest step that you got to come back to over and over and over again if you actually want to follow Jesus. Isn't it funny how hard we're willing to fight with God over something that's broken and messed up anyway? Like, God, I don't want to give you my life. You might mess it up. I've done such a great job with it. And the truth is, none of us want to die to who we think we are, because that false sense of self or that belief that we have about who we are, it's all we have. And honestly, this is what makes religion so toxic and so empty and so boring. Because it doesn't require any of us to actually make a concrete decision to turn ourselves and our lives over to the love and the care and the direction of God. We're still in control. We just go to church now. And honestly, if you're in that boat, at the beginning of our faith experience, that's normal and that's good. In fact, in the New Testament, people were repeatedly invited to come and see, to come and check it out, to come and see what Jesus was about, to explore and ask questions, to investigate things for themselves. In the Old Testament, God actually invites people to taste and see that the Lord is good. Come and experience who I am. But God's heart and desire isn't for you to go to church or to join a religion or even to be a good moral person. And so there's always a point in your journey, in your spiritual experience, there's always a point in your relationship with God where he will look at you and Jesus will invite you to come and follow him. And the only way you can do that is to face yourself, deny yourself, surrender your life to him. See, whatever that thing is that you keep doing, even though it's like hurting you, or hurting somebody you love, the truth is you're probably not managing as well as you think you are. And it's probably something that only God can fix for you and in you. You got to do some work, there's no doubt about that. But you need help outside of you. It requires that we give up control and give ourselves to him. We just don't want to do that. And honestly, that's really the story of Samson. God, I will follow you in any way that allows me to stay in control. I'm willing to sacrifice and give you anything except for the thing that you're asking me to give you. And God has a way of reaching into our life and we're like, here's everything, God. And he's like, nah, I'm going to reach under the pile and just go, hey, what about that thing? We're like, what about that thing? That's the thing. We often blame what's going on around us for why we do the things that we do, right? That's what Samson did. But the issues are actually inside of us. The problem isn't out there. The problem's in here. And until we're ready to admit that, until we're ready to admit that our fix, the thing we do to sort of feel better, whatever it is, that it will not ultimately fix us, you will never truly, until you're really ready to admit that and own that, you will never truly give yourself to God and ask him to do for you what you cannot do for yourself. And so Samson doesn't do that in the story, at least not yet. So the part of his story that we just read, it ends with what seems like could be a turning point, right? After he flips out, after he tortures 300 foxes and kills a bunch of people, he doesn't just go home like he's done before. He doesn't go back to his parents. He doesn't go back to his life like everything was normal. He leaves and he runs away and he goes and lives in a cave. He goes and hides in a cave. You ever been in that cave? You ever done that? You know the cave I'm talking about. The cave of shame and self-loathing and despair. The I can't believe I did it again cave. The God, will you please take this away from me? I mean, I don't want to give you my life, but will you just please fix this thing in me cave. The cave where you draw a line in the sand again for the 1,000th time, and you're like, I will never, and I'm not gonna, and now I have. I've been in that cave many, many times. So Samson eventually leaves the cave, and what does he do? Judges 16, verse 1. One day Samson went to the Philistine town of Gaza, and he spent the night with a prostitute. Don't worry, his wife and his father-in-law were burned alive before this, so he's not cheating on his wife at least. So his appetites and his behaviors continue to spiral out of control. And he's back to the same old pattern of whatever I need to do to make myself feel better right now, I'm going to do it. And each time it seems to escalate. Each time it seems to be a little bit more involved and a little crazier and a little more chaotic than the time before. See, our appetites don't just take over part of our life. They eventually take over all of our life because our appetites only know one word, and that word is more. They're never fully or finally satisfied. And we can do our best to sort of hide them and contain them and protect ourselves and the people we love from them, but they just keep growing and getting bigger. And what's crazy about Samson's story is that we haven't even mentioned the most infamous or famous part of his story, which is the part that would ultimately be his undoing, his relationship with a lady named Delilah. And honestly, that relationship is a perfect picture of what we're talking about this morning, because there's this thing, or in his case, this person that he loves. And not only is she not good for him, not only is it not good for him, it's actively trying to harm and destroy him, but it's exciting and it's fun, and so he makes excuses and he lies to himself, because that's what an excuse actually is, right? An excuse is just a lie that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And so Samson is blinded to just how far off he's gone from the day he made his vow. He thinks he's got it all under control, that he's too smart, he's too strong, he's too gifted, he's too spiritual for any of this to get the better of him. And so in his freedom, he keeps repeatedly making choices that limit his freedom. He authors his own destruction. And he can't see it yet because it actually hasn't happened, but his life is completely wrecked. Here's how it all falls apart. In Judges 16, verse 20. Then she, Delilah, this woman that he loved, cried out. She had betrayed him. He didn't know. She cried out, Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you. And we woke up, he thought, I will do as before and I will shake myself free. But he didn't realize that this time was different. He did not realize that the Lord had left him. So the Philistines captured him and they gouged out his eyes. And they took him to Gaza, where he was bound with bronze chains, and they forced him to grind grain in the prison. The thing he loved, the thing that started out being an escape, became a prison. The thing he thought he could control now controls him. The thing that once made him feel alive has taken so much from him, he wants to die. What an interesting phrase that it says, he didn't realize that the Lord had the Lord had left him. How terrifying and heartbreaking. I do want to clarify for you one thing, though. It doesn't mean that God had abandoned him. It means that God had decided to turn him over to the consequences of his own actions. That there was a deal, there was a vow that Samson had made with God, and that vow was conditional. And where God was like, I will do or not do these things if you will do and not do these things. And Samson had finally broken his side of the vow so many times that God was like, okay, fine, have it your way. If you don't want to do this, have it your way. Now, here's the good news for us. Unlike Samson, the deal that God wants to make with you, the deal that God has made with us, the deal that God is inviting you into isn't dependent on you and I at all. It's dependent on what Jesus did. He did it all. He paid the price. He fulfilled the terms. He will never leave you or forsake you. But like Samson, God will often bring us to the end of ourselves by turning us over to the consequences of our own choices and our own actions. See, things not working out the way we want them to is actually a gift from God. Because most of the time, until or unless something or someone comes along that we can't manage, that we can't control, we will never, ever actually find the true manager, the one who actually can handle it. And so God will allow things to come your way, and as smart and powerful and capable and talented as you are, you can't manage or handle it on your own. And he does that because he loves you. He loves you. And that is also super annoying. And the worst part is, just like with Samson, those situations will continue to increase in size until they're big enough and painful enough for us to actually pay attention to them and go, okay, mercy. Right? Because you've heard people, maybe you've said things like this. You've heard people say things like this. It wasn't until I lost everything that finally realized that it's just money. I didn't need to build my whole life on it. It wasn't until I had a heart attack that I finally realized I couldn't keep eating that way. It wasn't until my wife left that I finally realized that I actually had to deal with my porn addiction, that I actually had to deal with the things that are a part of my problems or my past. And some of us have been there. We're dealing with or have dealt with something corrosive, destructive, something life-controlling like that. Or we know and love people who have. The problem is that some of us haven't. Our thing really is just kind of a little thing, and right now we can manage it, we control it. We've never actually come to the end of ourselves to admit that we need God and his help in every part of our life, not just with the spiritual stuff. I think part of the reason that we stay in denial for so long is because we're usually asking the wrong question, right? We usually ask the question, is this destroying my life? No, it's not destroying my life. And we usually ask that question and we make that statement right up until the moment it destroys our life. The better question is this preventing me from being the best me I can be? Is this damaging my relationships? Is this hurting my family? Is this keeping me from actually stepping into the life God created me for? Because, let's be honest, something doesn't have to be sinful or destructive or illegal or immoral even to be a bad idea. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. Did you catch it? That there are some things that you need to strip off and you need to let go, and they're not because they're sin, but just because they're slowing you down. They're keeping you from becoming who God created you to be. They're weighing your life down. Some of those things are the sin that keeps tripping you up, but some of it's just weight. It's just the stuff that's slowing you down and dragging your life down. Because things that aren't sinful can still sabotage your life. I've shared quite a bit from this stage that I have abused food for most of my adult life. It has been my drug of choice. And it doesn't help that it's so yummy. I was sharing with somebody recently that there was a day, it was several years ago, but we were going through a particularly challenging time, and Hansi had called me with some not great news, and I was on my way to do a funeral. And so I was already stressed out because I was having to care for these other people and had all this family stuff going on, and I was just overwhelmed. And then she called to tell me this other thing, and It was not even a conscious decision. I just took the next exit and went right to a drive-thru. It was just like, those fries, they heal me. What's the Jim Gaffigan line? If God didn't want us to eat our feelings, why did he make them taste so good? I can tell you it's not a sin to eat. It's not a sin to love food, like enjoy food. But it has weighed me down in all kinds of different ways in my life. It has slowed down my life. It has affected my ability to be a dad and to be a husband. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, the Apostle Paul actually says something really interesting. He says, just because it's allowed doesn't mean it's good for you. You might be allowed to do something. Then he says this phrase that's really interesting. He says, but don't let anything master you. Ooh. To which we say, nothing masters me. I'm an American. Really, though? See, the thing is, if we'll actually deal with what's going on inside of us, it actually won't matter what the world is like outside. The world is getting more and more chaotic. I mean, if you thought things were crazy, 2024, I mean, we got multiple wars, and good thing the presidential election's real calm, and the economy's unstable, and just like the world is just like, whoa. Right? But it doesn't, the thing is what's going on in here? If you'll deal with that, if you'll give this to him, if you'll go, God, I'm giving myself to you, you won't have to escape. You won't have to get your fix every day. There's nothing wrong with enjoying some coffee, nothing wrong with enjoying some tacos, nothing wrong with some of that stuff. Like, of course not. But you won't have to medicate and manipulate your feelings to deal with the realities of life. Because you have a God whose love and whose strength and whose presence will fill your life. A little while ago, we read Jesus' words about dying to ourselves to follow him. Well, there's another side to that coin. It's found in Colossians chapter 3, verse 10. It says, put on your new self and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like him. This is so powerful. You don't have to face yourself by yourself or in your strength. And notice that there's a part for us to do, because he says, put on your new self and be renewed. See, we often think about, like, if I just come to God and I give it, it's all just God. God's got to change it all. He's got to do it all. But there's a part for us to do. Like, you would think that renewing or changing or transforming your life would be squarely in God's territory. That's his responsibility. But there's a partnership in this verse that we see where he says, be renewed as, here's how you do it, as you learn to know your Creator and become like him. Your life will change and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator, as you learn to know the God who made you and become like him. Wouldn't it be amazing if we didn't have to learn the hard way like Samson did? Because chances are you're not in danger of being enslaved and having your eyes gouged out. But just because that's not true doesn't mean there's not collateral damage around the habits and things that you have going on in your life. And so here's the incredibly challenging, brave thing that I want to challenge you to do this week, is that you will make a list of anything that you do to make yourself feel better, and be honest about whether or not some of those things are making something in your life worse. Whether it's finances or relationships or in your freedom, you're making choices that are giving away freedom, or something beyond that that's worse. Be honest. And you'll be tempted to lie, even though this list is only for you. For some reason, you'll be tempted to downplay and lie. Don't lie to yourself. Don't make excuses. Just be honest. Decide not to live in denial any longer. And here's the thing. you can continue to do whatever it is that you're doing because God's not trying to control you. He is not codependent. He just wants you to live and not be controlled, or in the words of the verse we read a second ago, not be mastered by anything else in your life. And so you can ask for God's help to see yourself and to see your behavior clearly. Jesus came and he said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, it's the sick. And the implication was this. It wasn't like some of y'all are good because you're healthy and it's the really messed up people that I came for. No, he's like, y'all are all sick and all messed up and all need a doctor, but some of y'all know it and some of y'all don't. That's what he was saying. Some of you are living in denial, and some of you have embraced the truth that you can't fix you. David in Psalm 139, it's this incredible prayer that he writes where he invites God to search his heart and soul. What if you and I had the courage to do that same thing, to ask God to search our heart and soul? And so this is what I want to give you. I want to give you a prayer that we can all pray together each day this week. Are we off? We have no slides. All right, we're not giving you that prayer. You're on your own. You know how to pray. Talk to God. He's listening. Well, let me just pray this prayer over you. Oh, here we go. All right. God, I give myself to you, heart and soul, not just the broken parts, not just the messed up parts, not just the parts that I want to give you. I give you all of me. I open all of the secret places of my life to you. I'm holding nothing back. I'm going to choose to die to myself and follow you. I want to know you, Jesus, and I want to learn to become like you. All that prayer does is incorporate several of the main ideas from the scriptures we read today. God, I'm going to surrender my life to you. Search me. I give you all of me. My life will be renewed as I get to know you and learn to follow you. Would you bow your heads with me? Let's pray together. God, we in this moment, and there's silence in the room, but for some of us, the noise in our soul is so loud right now. Our heart is racing because you're putting your finger on something that is really uncomfortable for us, that we maybe knew was a problem, but we're hoping it wasn't. For some of us, God, on the outside, to the average person, it maybe doesn't even look like a problem. But in this moment, you're putting your finger on our life. You're speaking to us about something, some habit, some way that we respond to the stress and the problems of life. And so in this moment, Lord, we want to turn down all of that noise and all of that volume on all the voices that are just trying to keep us where we are, maintain the status quo. And we just want to take a giant, bold step in our hearts towards you. A step of honesty, because you already see us. You already know us. And so, Lord, we just open our hearts to you and we give you all of us. Some of us just need to admit that our lives are out of control, that we're not in control, that there's things that we can't manage. There's people, relationships, situations that are beyond our ability to manage them. And Lord, we can come to you and actually meet the true manager, the one who can handle it. The world is chaotic. God, we do not want to continue any longer manipulating ourselves by medicating our feelings just so we can make it through the day. We want to step into life and grace and power that you offer us. We want to step into your healing and surrender all the mess and all the stuff to you. And begin to follow you. And as we follow you, as we get to know you, as we get to know our Creator, ourselves will be made new. We will be renewed. And so as fully as we know how to do, Jesus, we just quietly and simply say, I give you my life. I give you my life again, but I give you my life today. In your name we pray.
South Hills Church, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for watching our service online. Whether you're watching it for the first time or you're watching it again because you enjoyed the service so much from the weekend, I'd like to take a moment and dive into our giving. Every week we give people the opportunity to give back and give to the local church so that God can continue to bless your lives and bless your finances. Here at South Hills, we believe that everything comes from God. We believe that He's the one that chose us and brought us into this world, gave us our gifts and talents and abilities. And I just want you to know that when we give, we are giving back what God has already given to us. If you've ever seen any of our envelopes at a South Hills campus, you'll see on there that it says, every week at South Hills, your generosity is giving people the opportunity to live a better story. And there's a scripture on there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to encourage you today to click down below and set up your giving, whether it's for the first time or whether you're doing reoccurring giving. We have 4 ways to give here at South Hills. 1, you can do it in person at any of our campuses through an envelope. Or 2, you can actually text any amount that you would like to 84321. And the 3rd way is to download our Church Center app. I encourage you to do this one because the Church Center app gives you opportunity to stay connected with our church and your campuses. It's a great tool and resource for you to know what's going on. And the 4th way to give is to give online. You can go to southhills.org/give and you can set up your giving there. Whether you're a guest of our church or whether you are a member of our church, whether you simply just like to watch our services, I encourage you to trust God with your finances so that He can bless and anoint your finances and you can be trusting God in this journey of living life to the fullest. I love you and thank you for watching our online service today.